Hey, Andryanna here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Juggle is Real podcast. I'm especially honored to share this interview with today's guest because it has been really, really eye-opening and so meaningful for me personally. And you'll see as we get into the interview that it was kind of emotional, and it's really brought up some things for me that I think is really important. And I am so glad to have the takeaways that I have right now. I think for many of us, we're wanting to help in making a change. We understand the privilege that we have. We know that systemic racism exists, and we want to be allies. We don't support racism. We want to support anti-racism, and we do trainings in our workplaces, or we're doing reading, or we're looking on the news and we're seeing what's happening around us, and we want to make a change. But I also know that these things can be really hard, and they can feel really uncomfortable. And sometimes, at the end of the day, after a long and busy day, and we have so much on the go, that things like this can kind of fall off and nothing gets done, or we sometimes feel just a little too uncomfortable. And so those feelings we aren't willing to push through, which just doesn't really help at all. And so today we have Natalie Haynes on the podcast, and through her program, she's really helping to support people in getting more comfortable with having those uncomfortable conversations. Now, Natalie is a corporate connection consultant. She's an educator, a speaker, and a registered psychotherapist. She works in the space where connection and belonging can be interrupted, either within the relationship with ourselves or with others. And she really has a passion to teach people to remember who they are through experiential learning, as you'll see today. She's been in private practice for over 15 years, and she became a therapist because she was a client. So she knows what it's like on both ends of the experience. And so in her work, she's engaging with others using her vulnerability, personal stories, and experiences through which she found her own strength. And you'll hear about that today. Her current program is titled The Comfortable Race Conversation Process, which leads individuals through an experiential process to learn how to have uncomfortable conversations about race with other races. This program has been included in the Government of Canada's 50/30 Challenge as a tool to support organizations to have a more honest conversation about race. With all of this, let's just dive in and get started today. Welcome to the Juggle is Real podcast. I'm your host, Andryanna. A few years ago, burnout nearly cost me that happy, fulfilled life that I'd always dreamed of. Every day left me feeling overwhelmed with stress at work, at home, and just with life in general. I felt like I was constantly running and couldn't catch my breath. So I embarked on a journey of finding better balance, of learning how to prioritize my own needs, of shifting my mindset to live with more ease and balance, of learning how to do more without the pressure of doing it all. And I discovered that letting go of the need for a perfect life opened up opportunities to bring in more joy. So I am sharing my experience and my learnings with you so that you don't have to struggle. I want to show by example how liberating and empowering it can be to silence expectations, to learn how to live through the chaos of work and family with grace, joy, and ease. So what do you think? Are you with me? Let's get started. This episode of The Juggle is Real is sponsored by Olay's new niacinamide plus peptide 24 face moisturizer. Summer is here. And while the kids are off, this often means that parents, moms especially, have more on their plates, if it was even possible. Now, you may have some summer travel planned, and bringing self-care staples can help me de-stress while I'm traveling. My skincare routine has been part of my self-care ritual, and it is so easy to pack with me. The new Olay niacinamide plus peptide 24 face moisturizer is formulated with 99% pure niacinamide, which helps strengthen the moisture barrier of your skin for a 2 times stronger skin barrier and visibly corrected fine lines and wrinkles. Win-win. So this summer, be sure to take small moments to care for yourself with Olay's new niacinamide plus peptide 24 face moisturizer. It's available at your local drugstore. Now let's get back to the show. Natalie, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us on The Juggle is Real. How are you doing today?
I'm great.
Oh, good.
I'm great. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today.
Me too. And I know that we have sort of been chatting a little bit back and forth, and I really, really admire what you're doing. And I wanted to have this conversation with you one-on-one, but I thought, what better way than to share it with the listener who might be feeling the same way that I am, who might have questions or who might be unsure and might kind of just want to lean on someone, get that support, get that confidence, and know what tools they have available to them so that they can have those uncomfortable conversations, but feel more comfortable about it, know more about what's required to actually do the work and make a difference when it comes to talking about race or being in the workplace and working with, a diverse group and just living your daily life, knowing that you're part of the shift in a positive way. And so before we begin, because I have so many things that I really just want to learn from you, but I would just love to know a little bit more about you. So can you share kind of some of those beautiful things about yourself?
I am a 49-year-old Black woman with Canadian of Jamaican descent. My parents are Jamaican, and Jamaica. And I just want to say this one point: Jamaica is a country that is very mixed. There's a lot of different races that have come together. My family represents that as well. So I'm a mother of 2 children. My husband is white. My children are white passing. I have 2 sisters that are married to 2 different races. One sister is married to a Filipino man. The other one is married to a Black man. So the cousins are very mixed. And that's been a big part of, why I do what I do. I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist and seeing clients for 17 years approximately. And I used to work in the corporate world. So I worked in the corporate world in logistics and supply chain for about 12 years. And that was not enough. I needed to actually make a change. And so I went to school while I was working. I had babies while I was going to school and working, and basically moved from doing something I didn't really love doing to something I really, really love to do now. And so I've had my practice for, like I said, quite a few years. And I have recently, and I would say in the past 3 years, like since the pandemic, have started doing more workshops. Like I've always done workshops, but more workshops and training specifically around teaching people how to have conversations about race. Yeah. And, proud to say that this course specifically the Comfortable Race Conversation process has been included in the Government of Canada website. For me, the main point or purpose of what I'm doing, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because of my kids and my family. And I come from a very diverse background. And so I think, being able to find a way for people to actually connect, I think is just really important. And so, yeah, I don't know, that's a really, really important thing. And I think when we do have connection, I don't know how you feel about this, Andryanna, but when you have connection, or whether you feel connection, there's a feeling of peace, there's
Yes.
a feeling of possibility. And like things aren't as hard, not saying that things shouldn't be hard, but I believe that when we feel challenges, there's an opportunity to find some growth that leads to, more peace. So, when I look at my kids and I look at my nieces and nephews, I want that for them,
That's
so right. Yeah. And when I see what's happening in terms of how people are relating specifically around race, I don't know, it just makes me take a big, deep breath. And I feel like people aren't able to actually connect. And it's like a loss of what is potentially possible, so yeah, I think, yeah, that's why I come to this work. Yeah. So
Your passion definitely shines through. Absolutely. And I think through that passion, it's really just, opening doors and opening windows and allowing others to see that. And like you said, that the connection, I think the pandemic really was eye-opening for many of us who maybe were, not paying attention, or maybe there was a little bit of turning a blind eye. And I think that we weren't able to do that, during those times. There were just things that were happening that were, there were no excuses that could even remotely start to make us feel like, oh yeah, that was okay, that happened. And I can only really speak for myself, but I think that many of my listeners will feel sort of similarly in realizing just the privilege that I have, that we have. I myself, I'm white, right? I was born in a predominantly Caucasian community, raised with mostly people who look very similar to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that systemic racism exists, and in wanting to show allyship and wanting to support anti-racism, but just being uncertain about the ways of going about it. And sometimes that means not doing anything at all, right? And obviously that's not helping. So you have noted that we have to know what we are thinking, feeling, and believing to have the awareness to do something different. And that's really powerful. Like, simply, we just need to know how we think in order to change the way we think, which
Yep.
is really interesting because your program looks at understanding how we as humans respond emotionally, psychologically, and relationally to that concept of race by using ourselves as the tool. And you do a lot of experiential work, which I think is really cool. Can you speak to this and sort of your perspective and the way that you are helping others?
Yes. So I'll tell you how this started. I
Sure.
it was when George Floyd was murdered, and it was during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, when he was murdered, I was noticing all of these like the conversation that was happening online and like over social media. And I was, I really noticed the Black mothers that were so afraid for their children, and afraid that they would, what might happen to them if they go out, And as I shared in the beginning, my children are white passing. And I remember I was just sitting upstairs. I think I was like in between clients, and I said to myself, like, just really quietly, I said to myself, like, I'm never going to have to worry about that. Like, thank God. And then I said to myself, oh I don't have to worry about that. And I have Black skin. How did that, like, I just felt the privilege and the relief of what I'd said, and the horror of what I'd said to myself. And I was like, well, I can just, go along my merry way and just, you know, um, keep not acknowledge the privilege that I had or have, because I don't have to worry about that. And I decided to do something. So knowing the background that I had, knowing that, I had, because of my relationship to the concept of race, which had always been a journey for me, that I had resolved, knowing my psychotherapy background, I wanted to be able to include all of that, because what I was seeing online was people weren't able to connect and weren't able to have these conversations because of what was getting in the way. And it was, the conversation so quick, and there's so much emotion around it. And, when I'm working with clients in a therapeutic setting, I really work at slowing people down and really becoming aware of what they might be thinking, not just really what they're thinking, but more what are they experiencing physically, emotionally, and putting words to that, because that's always happening underneath the surface of our thoughts. And so that aspect of, what happens to us as humans is a really essential part of how we show up in conversations. So I was just in this moment where I was like, I got to do something. And this is what I decided to do. I decided to teach people how to have conversations about race, because experientially, until we know, it's like going to the gym. You go to the gym and you have to do a burpee the first time, it's terrible. But, consistently over time, you develop the muscles to know what's happening within me. You can feel yourself getting stronger. You can feel the possibility. So that's how I was taught psychotherapy. And I brought that education into this work. And I really feel that's the thing that's needed, because as you shared, there's a lot of people that want to do this work. And there's a lot of people that are doing the training, that are doing different, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. And I've spoken to many people about this. And the common thing that I heard from people of different races was that I'm still afraid to have a conversation about race. I know the things, I understand unconscious bias, I understand stereotypes, I understand all of these different aspects of the conversation, but how do I engage in a conversation? Because it's a bit terrifying. And that automatically will move people away from a conversation.
I'm going to suggest something, Natalie, that's a little bit different from what we typically do on the podcast, which is kind of to switch seats, so to speak, because you have shared that having a conversation about race can be easier than we think it is. So maybe we can just spend a couple of minutes actually doing it, and you can step in the interviewer slot, and maybe we can do some hot seat coaching and just have a short conversation that might lead to learning and shifting into better understanding and awareness. So I'll let you take the floor.
Okay. Yeah, I think people understanding how this could work might make it less scary, So one of the questions I always I ask in my program is, when it starts at the beginning, when didn't you know about race, and then when did you know? And so that's a different time point for everyone. As I explained earlier, I realized that I was Black when I was 7. So I asked my husband, when did you know you were white? And he's strawberry blonde with freckles. And he shared, well, I didn't know I was white. He said, but I did know that I was freckled because some man said to me, what'd you stand, you get caught behind a screen door in the sun. And he said, and from that moment on, he goes, I hated my freckles. And he did. So my question for you is, when was the first time that you became aware of your race or of someone else that was different? Like, do you remember the moment?
A really good question. And I'm trying to think, that just came to me. So it must have been just like tucked down, deep down somewhere. But I can remember there being a Black family who lived around the corner, and they gave out for Halloween one year wrapped candy that you could easily unwrap. And so when we were going through, how your parents go through the candy, and this is the good pile, this is the dangerous pile, the candy that this woman, Black woman, had given us, I can remember her long nails went in the bad pile of the things that could possibly be dangerous, because we learned in school, there could be razor blades in the streets, or there could be poison on the things. And so, our parents, we did it together. And I remember like putting that in the bad pile just to be safe, because it could be tampered with. Mm-hmm. And so that's just coming to me now. It's making me feel really shitty. Yeah.
So what's the thing that you're telling yourself that is making you say that? You know what I mean? Like, so even if you like this, because the shame is a natural emotion. Mm-hmm. And the shame says like, there's something wrong with me, but like what I shared earlier, everything, what we are told, what we have been, what was downloaded, what structural racism is, the water that we're in. It's on TV, it's on, it's what's shared, it's what, what the shows, it's what generationally we've all been told. So we're swimming in this water, and our awareness of what did I swallow is important. See, the thing is that it's our awareness that, oh my gosh, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, well, that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then being with this feeling of like, this must mean I'm a bad person. That's the
Yeah.
natural association that we go to. And therefore, want to run the other way, you know? But because we swallowed what was in the air, Beverly Daniel Tatum, she says, like, we swallow the smog in the air. She goes, it's not our fault that the smog was in the air, but we got to know what we ingested so we know how to get rid of it.
Yes.
We got to know
Thank
what it's,
you.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
So being with this, as soon as so that's a beautiful example. You were like, I'm nervous. It made me think of this other memory.
Yeah.
Which, how does that and how do these things that we are unaware of stop us in our day-to-day life? I might say this thing that we don't even know that we'll feel or say, but it's lodged underneath, and it's the digging out that we need to do, and understand that it is a natural process that we would have ingested this. And it doesn't mean that we're bad people, but what it does mean is that we have a responsibility to know, well, actually, do I feel that? Is that true for me? How did I come to that? And do I believe that now? No.
Right. You're right.
So, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it happened. So then you can move forward. And
This is great. Yeah. Thank you
yeah,
so much. Thank you so much.
yeah, that's the work. That's the work.
This is the work.
This is the work.
I'm happy to sit in this hot seat and share this because this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
And thank you, Natalie. And I hope the listener too is kind of doing their own thinking and answering your questions in the same way and feeling those feelings as well.
Yeah. Do you notice now what you're feeling? Like, does it feel different now that we've had the beginning, the middle, and the end? And it might be
Honestly,
just,
it felt like a bit of like a release, actually. Like I feel kind of like some it's kind of like a wave, kind of like coming down from a wave, but with like a knowingness. Like a yeah, it's definitely there's definitely like it felt like an accumulation, some nervousness, and now it's kind of like subsiding and it's kind of releasing. But I think it's been really helpful because it's going to allow me to be more aware now moving forward.
yeah, I would be curious to know what you notice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And see when other conversations come up, see what you notice. Yeah. It's a process. Like how I approach this is actually having people understand their racial identity, and their racial identity meaning, what are the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs and experiences and the meanings that I've associated with the concept of race. As an example, other aspects of our identity, when you think of us as women, I have thoughts, feelings, and beliefs about who I am as a woman. I have thoughts,
Yes.
beliefs, and feelings about who I am as a Canadian. I have thoughts, feelings, and beliefs about and experiences about who I am as the daughter of Jamaican parents, and what it means to have that in my background. So we have a relationship to all these different aspects of our identity. And race is one that we have not, I believe, explored. So we may have all these thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and experiences and beliefs that we don't know are there. It's like, I always use this metaphor of a massage. It's like going for a massage and all of a sudden you feel a knot in your back. And you're like, that's been there the whole time. Like I've been walking around with that. That really hurts. Right?
Yeah.
So it like has to kind of be worked out, right?
And now
So
I can't leave without it being gone, right? Like
yeah,
get it out of here.
get it
Yes,
out.
totally.
And once you know, because once you know it's there, you have to, it's like contending with it. And so this is the thing that shows up in conversations and why they become difficult. Because if we are unaware of the things that we believe, we will show up in conversations with that in our background without our awareness, like
Yes.
I've flipped the example of like, let's say you grew up with, parents that unfortunately were very critical. Even even though we know that each one of us is worthy because we are born, those messages, they become ingrained within us. They become a part of who we are. And it shifts how we relate to people. That's why this is relational. It shifts how we move through the world. It shifts how we might feel about ourselves. So if we walk into a conversation and we've been told that we are not enough and have that belief that's integrated within us, when we have to walk into a situation, we will walk in like this, like, crouching my body. We may constrict. We may not show up fully because that's what we are physiologically attuned to or aligned with. So
Yeah.
when it comes to race, we all have these different thoughts, beliefs, experiences that we're not even aware that we know or don't know. And so how do they impact how we show up in conversations?
Beautiful.
They would,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the moment have to lean into a conversation, maybe you're at a meeting, maybe it's with another mother, maybe it's with, I don't know, like whatever situation or organization you might be with, whatever situation you might be in, if the conversation emerges about race, what will naturally emerge is all of those beliefs and feelings. And so until they are explored, they will remain, so this
Okay.
is, it's really about exploring what's there. It's not therapy. It's more like, let me just get I need to be able to self-assess and start with myself so that once I know, I can do something different. I might not actually be aligned with the beliefs that I have, but I have to know that they're there so that I know that they're not showing up in the world. Yeah.
So awareness really is the first step. I think in so many different ways, and especially in this case. Now, when you were sharing, I was feeling very emotional because just in what you said, when you had that thought that came to you, like, okay, well, I'll never have to worry about my kids, facing, systemic racism because, they look like they're white. Like for me, I was like, that hit me because I don't know that that direct thought necessarily came to me, but it made me think like, you know what, that's true. Like that probably was sitting within me somewhere. And it just made me feel like, wow, wow. And so the awareness part, even just this conversation has unearthed some things in me already. And
Mhm.
one of the things that you said that really resonated is that the majority of people believe that this work is important and they want to be part of making a change with structural racism, and they just might not be sure of how to enter into this work. And yes, there's a lot of training in the workplaces, and that training is wonderful. Even the college that I teach, they're doing a lot of, diversity and equity inclusion training, and there's, emails sent to us all the time. But I think, like you were saying, people still walk away fearful of saying the wrong thing in a conversation. And to your point, you know, we are juggling a lot. Our plates are full. There's a lot happening, especially, working moms who are, trying to tackle so many things on our to-do list. And it's like, this is really important, but how do we find the time when we're already unsure of what to do? So
Mhm.
I would love for you to help us in just kind of, I guess my question to you is, how can we develop the tools to have these uncomfortable conversations? Where can we begin?
Well, the beginning is with yourself, right? The beginning is always with you. As you shared, there is a lot of training, and, you know, and I'm this is not a broad brush statement, but I think people may walk it's wonderful, and walking away and saying, oh gosh, I have to remember, I have to say this thing, I have to do this thing in order to be with this person. But you know what the issue is? It's like our attention is on what are the things I should do, as opposed to who is the person that's in front of me.
Mm.
Because every single person is unique and different, and have different experiences and have different relationships to the concept of race. Not every white person is going to respond in the same way or have the same experiences or beliefs. And not every Black person or Asian person will have that same relationship to the concept of race. Everybody will be different. Of course, there are similarities. However, we need to know, what am I experiencing with this person in front of me?
I think that brings it back to the connection piece that you
Yes.
were suggesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because if we're working at trying to say the right thing, we're not noticing the person in front of us. We've lost our presence. We've lost our awareness. So that's where people, I think, get really nervous, because they don't know how. And so when I say starting with yourself, it is starting with, when I walk into a situation where even noticing when a conversation comes up, or being in a training, or, if you're walking down the street and you notice someone of a different race, checking inside and seeing, what is happening with me right now?
Mm-hmm.
What's the thing that I notice?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not an easy thing to do, because when we feel something, I'll say it this way, sometimes it can be hard to contend with the beliefs that we had or have, right?
Yes.
And, it's like, oh my gosh, what does this mean about me? And this was as, when I was 7 years old. So when I was 7 years old, that was the first time that I learned that I was Black. Okay. So I was having a birthday party, and my mom said, or I said to my mom, when's so-and-so coming is so-and-so coming to my party? And my mom looked at me and she was like, well, probably not. I don't think her parents may want her to come to our home because we're Black. And my mother shared that because she was trying to teach me and, make me be aware of what was happening in the world. But I remember what I did was I looked down at my skin color and said, oh my gosh, I'm Black? Like, what does that mean? And unfortunately and unintentionally, this, the comment that my mother said that really was to protect me, created a meaning and belief about how I thought about my own skin color, what I thought about myself, and where I ranked in this imaginary hierarchy that I created in my mind. And so that I felt was validated by what I saw in the world. And so I walked through the world like I was at the bottom of this ladder. So I did not want to be my own skin color. I did not want to be Black. And I think so it was almost like it's like an internal oppression, and I had a lot of shame, because how do I interact and talk about race when I don't want to be my own race? Mm. So I felt a lot of shame. I felt deep shame. And at the same time felt, I don't even know how to say it. It was just a really confusing time, because how I saw myself was less than because of my skin color. So during my, therapy, like in therapy school, you do a lot of therapy, personal therapy. And this relationship was something that I had to look at. And when I did, I had to be with the discomfort of what I actually believed about myself. And when I did, I was able to let it go and understand where it came from, and I was able to look at what this issue was with fresh eyes and a new perspective, and choose the meaning about what my skin color means.
I think that's beautiful. And thank you for sharing your own experience, because I think that is just really important to know that every person is unique. Everyone has different biases. Everyone has different, those subconscious beliefs that we all have. And, regardless of race, we all have them, right? But for people who, might be Black, that might just be an extra layer that is preventing them from being the most beautiful version of themselves. Not only dealing with things that are happening in the external environment that might be preventing them from doing that, but also that they've internalized it themselves because they've been shown or they've been told, or what they see around them. And so, knowing, like, just to be kind and to be gentle, because we don't know what anyone has gone through. We don't know what those beliefs are, and we don't know where they are in their journey of, whether they still hold on to that, or whether they're, more comfortable with being who they are. And so I think it's really great that you've done your own internal work, and now you're sharing this with others so that they can realize that people are having this process, but also for ourselves, because it really does begin with us. And your program, the comfortable race conversation process, it really invites people to come together, and better become aware, and then have those tools to sort of bridge that gap. I feel like we've covered so much in this short conversation, and also we've only just skimmed the surface.
Yes.
And this has really unearthed a lot in me, and it has made me want to really take a much closer look at myself and how I'm responding. And I thank you so much for that, Natalie. I would like to know, before we close out, this program that you're offering, I mean, of course we're bridging this gap, but what are you doing? It seems like it's, taking a much closer look and really helping people in their daily lives. Can you tell us a little bit about this program, and then where we can find more when we want to learn more, or how we can get in touch with you so that we can find out more about your programming?
Yeah, so the program is the Comfortable Race Conversation process. It is run online. So it's a 7-week program. It's 6 modules that consist of 6 modules that span over 7 weeks. And each week, the participants will receive a module that includes video, homework, supplementary material that they can go through on their own time, which I feel gives, and they're really quick, they're short videos, so it's not an onerous task. Some are long, but it gives people sort of a framework. Every Friday after that module after people have access to that, each Friday morning in between each module is a 90-minute online virtual session that is facilitated by myself. And how that runs is I do some teaching, and then we essentially get into the experiential exploration of our own racial identity. And so each person is exploring their own while having conversations with other people and with the group. And over the 6 weeks, what happens is people develop the emotional muscle, explore what feelings and thoughts that they have, and really understand, because of my therapy background, what these emotions mean, how they work, what happens in our bodies. So by the end, they've have the tools in order to go into their lives and have different conversations with the people that they are in relationship with, and create the spaces that they want to create, and create the supports that they want to create, and really have some authentic, like really have some connection. It's not always good, it's not always comfortable, but it's the purpose of this is to allow it to be possible. And I think possibility and comfort is better than not having any conversation at all.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Natalie, I so appreciate your time today. I appreciate you sharing with us the personal stories that you've shared, how you're helping others, the experiences that they've had, and how we can take a step further. I'm going to include all of the links in the notes for this podcast episode so that the listener can go ahead and check that out and learn more about you and this beautiful program that was also featured on the Government of Canada website, so that, for their own personal lives, for their workplaces, for the people that they are interacting with, we can all work together to make positive change. So I really appreciate you being here. I thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, that was such an amazing experience. I hope that you did some of that questioning yourself, that you felt some of those feelings, and whatever is coming up for you, that you're just allowing it to be there and recognizing those feelings that you're having. I loved having this conversation with Natalie, but I know that this is just an initial step in my own awareness, my own understanding, and in the changes that I'm going to be making in my own life so that I can have these uncomfortable conversations. And I welcome you to do this as well. To find Natalie, there are links in the notes for this episode. So please go ahead and click through, learn more about her and her programming. If this conversation resonated with you, if you found meaning, if you gained better awareness and found those insights, I would invite you to please rate this episode, write me a short review, and please share it with one friend, someone who could really benefit from hearing this conversation as well. I love you so much. I'm so grateful for you for tuning in and for learning with me. Until the next time, take good care.